Hey traders, welcome to the Friday strategy session and trade review. So interesting week so far. As you guys know, a little bit of a rough start, but as of yesterday, things really starting to move in our favor, which has been good to see. Yesterday, we spoke a lot about getting into these New Zealand dollar extended levels and the pound extended levels. And as you can see, we had a really strong reaction to those levels. It was just about finding the good entry point for these trades, which wasn't always easy. But there were some on the cards that I think paid off really well, and should continue to pay off really well as we go into this kind of higher risk environment moving forward. We see things like New Zealand dollar yen, like we said, pulling back from really extended levels. You could see right up to at 1.618 and then turned, and we've seen a really strong pullback since then. In terms of trades today, it's kind of difficult. We had the big move yesterday, so you can expect a little bit of consolidation today. So in terms of finding trades now, the strategy is to look for those lower degree corrective structures rather than flags, which means we're going to be in this region for a little while, I believe, waiting for those trades, the ones that you aren't in already. Euro New Zealand, that little trade that we had set up off this flag, turned out really well. Nice little push off those lows. We should see this continue to the upside moving forward. Again, there's nothing really to trade right now. For now, you're going to be watching and waiting for corrective structures. Hopefully, nice big running flats that should see this continue to the upside. Euro US dollar. We did see this trade kick in. As we said, we would want to see this move to break even very early on because we weren't very certain of the dollar. We spoke about how when you look at the dollar yen, you look at the dollar Swiss, the dollar was rallying against those pairs. So it was very difficult to look at this Euro US dollar trade and think this is one that has certainty behind it. We needed to move to break even really quickly. And that's exactly what we got there. We had a little entry order above these highs. We pushed in and then got taken out for break even a couple of hours later. It was a fairly basic trade in terms of moving to break even because we pushed up towards 122.40. It's a nice little push off those lows. So lots of room to move to break even, and you really should have got break even. If you're still in this trade and you're stopped below the lows, I suggest you close this trade. It's very unlikely that we're going to see this turn to the upside. The only way that occurs is if we have the ABCDE wrong and we're now in our E wave only now. It's a possibility, but the way things are playing out, the way bond yields are rising, the way the dollar is starting to catch a bid, I believe what we've seen is the end of it. If we look at the structure, we have a nice push off the lows, ABCDE, we push up towards 0.618 of the structure, and we've turned from there. To me, that is a complete structure, and we've turned to the downside. And what I think now, what we're seeing is all of this is your first impulse, and now what we're seeing is your first corrective structure of a lower degree. So what I think is going to happen now is a chop back down to the lows. I still think what we're looking at is a dollar turn, and we're going to see a chop down to the lows. We're going to see a big push up, and then more than likely the beginning of the US dollar strength against the euro. And I think we've already started to see this against the pound. When we zoom out to the weekly, you can see how we went to touch on that 1-to-1, which we spoke about, got right up to that max target, and then really strong push off those lows. Potentially, or what we were looking for is a nice little corrective structure, but all that we got was a strong push off those lows. So this corrective structure, we now need to wait and see if we can catch it down here somewhere. Waiting for a little bit of corrective structure on the lower time frame to form. Obviously, we need to take this whole impulse into account, which means we'll be here for a little while and then look for that short entry. I think we've come too far to try and trade any little flags that come up because there's a good chance that turns against us and we go into correction fairly early on. The problem with that is there's a good chance this just continues motoring down as well. So this is really a trade you wanted to be in higher up. There were better trades to be in than the pound US dollar though. So don't kick yourself if you're not in this yet. But basically we're looking at a trend change, and now we can look for short entries, short setups to take advantage of that higher time frame trend. Euro pound was another trade we had in mind. That's taken off really nicely for us. As you can see, basically just a really strong rally from here. So start to look at moving this to break even. When you have such a strong reaction, I might just move my stop to kind of half risk down below these lows. I just give this a little bit of room to breathe, or maybe break even. I don't know. I'll decide. I'll see how things feel, but looking really good regardless. And zooming out, what I'm expecting is a nice push up to at least this 92 level, which shows you how the pound against the dollar could just continue to drop pretty strongly. But there's no means to look for trade entries just yet. Pound yen is another one, seeing a strong push off those highs. If we go to the higher time frames, there was a little bit of a flag here that you could have taken, and that should have paid out really nicely. And this should continue to pay out. If we go again back to the weeklies, you can really see how we right at the top of the structure. We weren't quite there all the way to the top. We had a 0.786. This could be the start of the turn, or could just be correction for one more leg up. But when you see this kind of reaction off the highs, you have to just keep a close eye on what you're looking at. We still need to see a crossover on the 4-hour. We've seen a bit of a crossover on the hourly. In terms of looking for trades, I think really the only trade we have is waiting for, again, lower degree corrective structures. Pound New Zealand, I think I never ended up taking this trade, but we were looking at this as a potential hedge against, and you may have been taken into this one as a hedge. But so you are sitting a little bit underwater, little stop loss, not a problem if you're taking a 1%, because when I said take this Pound New Zealand trade, I also said take one of the other pound trades in return. So you should be up in one and slightly underwater in the other. Still the chance that what you see here is a little bit of a rally up to break even. If it does get up there, I would close this trade for break even, and see how things develop from there. You should be more than happy with some of the pound trades you have going at the moment. Bitcoin, very interesting price action on Bitcoin. As you can see, we're looking for this expanding triangle. What I said was wait for a break of these highs, wait for a little push down, and then you can look for a long entry above these highs. But all we got was strong push off the highs back down towards these lows. So really interesting to see how this develops. Obviously, if we start to see something pretty choppy and corrective in here, that's going to be interesting, because that to me is a good sign that we've seen a top, because what we would be looking at then is all of this is your A wave, this chop down would be your B wave, then we may get a C wave, and all of that could just be a big running flat for downside. So at the moment, that's how we're looking at it, looking at this as your A wave, and we see how things develop. This is your first impulse off the highs. So this could be the top in crypto. Ethereum, like I said, you want to wait for a break of this line and look for the Ethereum long as opposed to the Bitcoin long, but we didn't really get there. We're seeing the same thing, still seeing that pullback. So as it stands, I'm still keeping this viewpoint that that was an expanding or an ascending wedge. And what we're sitting in now is your first corrective structure. So if you do like to trade crypto in terms of margin, you can maybe look for these shorts in Bitcoin and Ethereum, but I would really give this time to play out. Crypto market's still kind of frothy, so you'll need to give this time to develop. And if you do get that corrective structure, that could be a really, really good short. Gold playing out nicely in our favor. Little expanding triangle, expanding running triangle, I think looks like it is the game, and we're seeing some good returns in our trade so far. Really liking that. Silver is another one, moving back towards break even finally, and it looks like we're going to get some nice legs to the downside in these precious metals. Platinum is another one. The setup was pretty good in terms of the trade. We were saying look for this to develop into a nice ABCD. There was a risky one having a little flag there, but that turned out to pay off really well if you did take it. Otherwise, you have an entry order below these lows, stop above the highs, and you can trade it in that fashion. It's not ideal. I mean, it's not the ideal structure. When you look at this B wave in comparison to the other waves, it doesn't have the complexity I would like, but that is actually starting to look more like a triangle. You may start to see this develop into a running triangle, which may be a very attractive trade, because you have this little 1, 2, 3 up, you have this little 1, 2, 3 down, a bit of a 1, 2, 3 up, you have this 1, 2, 3 down. So what you can expect now, and if you do see it, I think you should trade this, because This little move to the upside will then be considered your E wave. And you can see how this is developing into a bit of an expanding triangle. Don't expect it to get all the way up to the trend line. All you're looking for is a little bit of a pop higher. In that case, entry order below these lows is a definite trade in my view. That could be really good. I may even look at taking another precious metal trade if we get this set up, because these running triangles look to do really good. I'll obviously keep it low risk because I've already got some risk in silver. My gold trade is risk free at the moment because it's at break even. So that's why I'm more inclined to add platinum to the mix, because gold is already at break even. There's no risk there. It's just profit at the moment. Silver's approaching break even, so a little bit of risk is off that table too. So I can look to add a little bit of risk into platinum. Another trade is oil. I kind of line this up with gold, silver, and platinum. So don't take all of these trades. Find one that really works for you. But we're seeing zoom out all the way to the weeklies. We're at the top of a structure. So again, we can start to look for those short trades. When we go to the 4 hour, we're seeing a little bit of a rising wedge breaking out of that wedge. You can see how extended we are on the lower degree structure, where we have this push up. We don't even have a 4 hour correction. So you have to look at this as your impulse. A, B, C, D, E. We're coming off of those maximum levels, 1618. So I like this trade already. Looking at the hourly, we're looking for entry. There was maybe a small little entry here if you want to look at that. But it's really tricky to call that a flag. So it was tricky trading. If you did take it with a nice wide stop, that was a good trade. If you see a nice little flag develop here, I think putting a little entry order below those lows and fairly wide stop, giving you a little bit of room to breathe, that could work out really well for you as we start to see oil pull back with the rest of the market as the dollar starts to rally. So things looking really good in terms of trading heading into the end of the week. Rough start, but we started to get some profits back on the table. A lot of these trades looking good, and they should continue to look good if things continue the way they are. It's cool, guys. Have a good one. And we were going to do a trade review. Trade review was this last week or this week? I think that was last week. So we didn't really have too many trades this week, if I'm not mistaken. We only really opened up into those other trades. Euro New Zealand is open and running. Euro US dollar was a potential trade. I never took this trade, but I told you guys go to break even because of the structure, because of some other dynamics in the market where we saw some of the other US dollar pairs looking a little bit stronger, which means you wouldn't look for this to just continue to rally. So you wanted to take advantage of a potential rally if it did, but you wanted to move to break even really early on. So you should have moved to break even. If you didn't, you were probably holding on to hope a little bit too much. Don't worry, I do that as well. But you should have really got break even. And if you're not, and if you can see the market's moving still pretty much against you, take your trade off now rather than going all the way to the stop loss. You may even find a little bit of a short entry here available to you at some point. So don't get caught in this trade taking a full loss. Pound dollar. I was one to be more patient with this one and never played out, and that's fine. I'm still going to look for these entries. Remember, this week we were looking for pretty high risk trades. So we were keeping 1% positions, and we were looking to trade flags wherever we found them because of these extended levels on the pound and New Zealand dollar. So we're no longer looking for flags. We're looking for real, legitimate, lower time frame setups. So that's what we're keen on now, and that's going to take some time to play out. Euro pound, like we said, flags. This was a really good flag trade that played out in our favor. And now we're waiting for our rewards. We kept a nice wide stop. Check how wide the stop is compared to the relative market, because there was a worry we were going to go see a new low and only then start to see a rally. Again, we were trading extended levels. Look at this hourly level. No real deep corrective structures on the hourly for a while. So you can take advantage of those conditions by having a wider stop and trading in these flags. Pound yen was another one. We were looking for extended levels, looking to take advantage. Obviously, ideal was to get a nice flag up here after a big impulse, but this impulse took a long time and we only got the flag here. Still a good trade. Changes your risk reward dynamics, but still a good trade if you did take it. Pound New Zealand. again, we're looking at this trade. Don't be mistaken that I have this in here because I didn't actually take this. I was just showing you the risk reward dynamics where you have a structure or potential structure, put it that way, because it wasn't really clean as to where this structure fits in with this section here. So we were looking at it as a potential little structure for a move back up to this region, keeping in mind we were looking at the higher time frame that looked along these lines, A, B, C. So we were looking at it as a potential central structure, in which case we were looking at this as a wave failure, and this was a push higher. And the only reason I said this was a decently looking good trade was because of the hedge against the euro pound, the pound yen, these other trades that we had in place that may or may not have played out in our favor. So as a hedge, this was looking like a decent trade to the upside to trade up here. Now that we see it, it's a potential short trade really, because what we have is a push up A wave, a 1, 2, 3 down, and you have a push right up to this 1.0.618. So we have a complete structure in here, theoretically speaking. I'm not saying this is over. We still might pop higher, but what we have is, theoretically speaking, a complete structure, which means what's next is a strong move to come to the downside. We have a move resembling a really attractive looking short trade on the pound New Zealand if it does play out. I'm already in a lot of these pound trades, so I'm not so keen on them. And again, it's not ideal setup because what you have is all of this as an impulse, meaning if you really want to look for this as a short, you'd have to be here for a while. You need to be here till at least the 3rd of March, all of this as a correction. If you want to take this on a higher risk trade, you can consider this a flag, consider this opportunity to break down from here. The risk being that this breakdown straight away shifts into a little bit of a corrective mode and you get stopped out or you have to take some pain in the short run. So that's some of the options. It's not ideal trading in my view. The pound New Zealand or pound yen trades, the extended pound trades, the extended New Zealand trades were ideal. And you're seeing this little mixture in the pound New Zealand because both of these pairs were overextended. So against each other, they're going to seem a little bit choppy now. Now it's about seeing which one's going to win out over the other. For me to take this trade, I'm more inclined to wait for this to pop up to here, 197, see if we get this actually trading out as we thought it would, because it is only a contracting flat. Contracting flats are difficult to trade. If it is a contracting flat, I'm more inclined to really wait, be patient, wait for a legitimate 1 hour lower degree corrective structure, and then trade that to the downside. Because in the end of the day, the higher time frame structure is still really attractive. We still want this move down. Get rid of some of this. We still want this move to the downside. If it is a contracting flat, I'm more inclined to really wait, be patient, wait for a legitimate 1 hour lower degree. Sorry about that. So yeah, structure. God, excuse me. And then trade that to the downside, because in the end of this thing has its own mind. So again, we have this big impulse. We have a decent looking corrective structure, nice running flat structure. So we're looking for this move. We're just looking for the right entry. So I'm more inclined to wait for a really good setup on this because we missed any opportunity to flag. In reality, that was a potential flag, but it was risky because you were trading it as a contracting flat and you weren't sure about what you were seeing. So it wasn't in reality a really good trade. Now we wait for a better setup and we trade this short later on down the line. So cool, guys, that's it for the trades. Silver we spoke about already. Gold we spoke about already last week. Nice to see these coming into play. And then UK oil is a good setup if you can find a good trade. Cool, guys. That's it. If you have any questions, it always helps me to formulate a little bit of a way of discussing this with you, what you need struggling or what you're struggling with, what you need help with, what I can put into these webinars, especially the Friday trade reviews. You can send me your trades either anonymously, which I'll discuss in anonymity, or you can discuss them live on the webinar and tell me what you wanted, where you could have improved on your trading. So it's a good thing to take advantage of to really put yourself out there a little bit and learn in that fashion. If you don't want to put yourself out there, send it to me anonymously and I'll discuss it without discussing your name or whatever. It's cool, guys. Have a good one. We'll chat again on Sunday for the weekly strategy session.